Okay, folks. Hey, everybody. Starting a little early today. My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World, What's Happening. And today we're going to be talking all about the final end boss of conspiracy theories. That is the New World Order. Been kind of building up to this one for a while, but before we start with that, I want to show you where we're at with our piece that we've been working on for the last 3 months almost. And I think we're done. I think we're finished here. So this was our Demon Head guy. I did a few further edits here. I put a background on it, just a very simple kind of thing to draw it out some. And I did a little bit of editing with the burn tool in Photoshop and stuff like that. And I might do a little bit more to this because it's still a little bright to me. Like I'm thinking I might do something like I have another layer that I might add on it like that and then do some more highlights and stuff. But anyway, effectively, this is essentially done. Maybe like another half hour left on it or not. So thought I would show that all to you guys, and we're going to start something new today. So let's just go ahead and close this one, close that. And then I have another thing that I drew that I want to work on a little bit. So I do this kind of sort of a lot where I'll take like a page in a sketchbook and just fill the entire thing, right? So here's an example of that. And you can see it's like it gets a little messed up when you scan it. So we're going to be cleaning this up and then maybe I'll put some colors behind this. This is another piece which is going to take us weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But that's okay. Anyway, folks, so what we need to do first is put another layer underneath this. Let's see. Can I do layer from background here or something? New layer from visible. There we go. Okay. And then this layer you can just toss. How do I delete this? Remove layer. There we go. And then this one, I want to put some like make a white background on it, right? So that way when we erase stuff, it'll like show up. Do I have a paint bucket here? See, I'm still kind of, there we go, fill tool. So still kind of learning this stuff. There we go. And then we want to make this one uh, multiply. All right. Okay, folks. So let's jump right into it. The New World Order is sort of, you know how last time when we spoke about the flat Earth, excuse me, the flat Earth being like, say, the final boss of conspiracy theories, right? Well, the New World Order is sort of like when you beat the final boss in the video game and then he takes on his final form, right? That's the New World Order. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because it is basically not really a single conspiracy theory. It is more like a large group of conspiracy theories, which is ever expansive and evolving. Wow, you know what? First off, this image is way too well. I don't know. Maybe I might be able to handle it. This computer has a lot of memory, so maybe I might be able to handle. I was gonna say this images might be too big, but let's go for it and see if it starts like jacking up my stream if it's too big. You know, I know my old computer couldn't handle it, but maybe my new one can. Anyway, um, so yeah, it is the sort of most massively gigantic conspiracy theory ever. And it's not even really a conspiracy theory in and of itself. It's more of like a framework by which other conspiracy theories are added, right? That's what the World Order has become. But in its most basic form, um, what it is a series of various conspiracy theories which suppose that a shadowy group of individuals or associated groups have been manipulating world events behind the scenes for sometimes centuries. You know, at least the entirety of the 20th century and 21st centuries, but in some versions of this conspiracy theory, even further back than that, and have been manipulating world events in order to eventually remove national governments from power and enslave the world in a giant worldwide version of either Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia or something, like depending on who you talk to. Right. I guess you would just say a worldwide authoritarian government. Right. And it's very hard to pin down because there are literally dozens and dozens and dozens iterations of this kind of conspiracy theory, right? Where it has just evolved over the years into so many different tangents and versions and permutations that it's kind of almost impossible to classify it all into one unified theory. Part of the reason for that is because every time there's an item in the news, every time something happens in the news, the proponents of the New World Order conspiracy theory, like out there, will just fold it into the conspiracy theory. They will just, um, they'll just take anything that happens and toss it in there. Like literally anything. And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be something like a celebrity death. Michael Jackson dies. Oh, that's part of the New World Order thing. He faked his death in order to escape them, blah, 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 right? Something like that. Or Harvey Weinstein gets caught, goes to jail because he's part of the, satanic pedophiles of the New World Order, and et cetera, et cetera. Will Smith slaps Chris Rock at the Oscars. Oh, they planted that. They they did that on purpose in order to, distract people from what's really going on. I'm literally not kidding. Like, you can go on Reddit right now and find people posting threads and making comments exactly to that effect, where they think even something like that, even, a comedian insulting an actor's wife and getting smacked in the face is somehow part of the vast conspiracy to, like, take away your guns or whatever. Right. This is unfortunately, I wish I was joking, but I'm not joking, right? So, belief in this conspiracy theory is extremely widespread from all corners of the political spectrum, right? So, however, it does seem that within the last 30 years, it has become extremely prevalent in right-wing circles, which is not to say that people on the left don't actually believe in some version of this conspiracy theory, because a lot of them do. All right, hang on a second, folks. My cat is crawling at the door. He wants to come in. Come on, kitty. There we go. Behave yourself. So it's not to say that there aren't people on the left who believe in some version of this conspiracy theory, right? But they tend when it's people on the left, they tend to believe in a secular conspiracy of rich and powerful elites that are running things behind the scene in order to make money, right? And when it's on the right, they tend to believe that it's basically satanic pedophiles that are trying to take over the earth in order to prevent Jesus from coming back. And, like, I don't know, outlawing abortion or something. Yeah, so it just seems to me that the more wacky something people believe, the more right wing they tend to believe. And it also is extremely, extremely prevalent among the right wing, right? Um, like, I can't really stress how prevalent it is. It's almost become sort of like an addendum to Christianity almost, at least in the United States. It's become something that you'll get people who are like evangelicals or Protestants essentially, right? And the more ultra conservative they are, the more likely they are to believe in one version or another of this conspiracy theory. And I actually watched a video on this once. It was very interesting, where there was a couple of preachers who were like being interviewed about this, right? And it was related more to QAnon, but QAnon is actually an extension of the New World Order conspiracy theory. That's where that's where QAnon came from, right? And we'll get into that a little bit later. And they basically said that, well, a lot of preachers and a lot of churches and stuff will not explore these more wacky, far right conspiracies, right? Because it's bullshit, right? And so there will be some though, like there's a few pastors out there who sort of capitalize on these things, and content creators who make YouTube videos and podcasts and that kind of thing, and it's almost become adopted into the religion. You know, it's become like essentially part of the American conservative expression of Christianity at this point, to believe that there's in one form or another of this conspiracy, of this new world order conspiracy theory, that there's, because it's actually something that's very conducive to Christians, to Christianity especially, because Christianity believes that the current world is controlled by the forces of darkness. That's kind of a core tenet of Christianity, that the devil controls this world. Well, if the devil's in control of this world, then that must mean that the people who actually, the rich and the powerful people who call the shots, must be in league with Satan, right? So it's very easy to believe in something like that. It's very easy to believe, you know, one belief leads to another. All right, Kitty, you're distracting the hell out of me. Get out of here. All right, I have to kick the cat out. He's being very, very distractive. I'm streaming right now. Go away, cat. No, both of you go away. All right. Anyway, sorry about that. So, but it's very, very, very prevalent in right-wing circles, and the more ultra-conservative you get, the more likely you are to believe in it. It's very prevalent among, like say, right-wing groups like the John Birch Society, for example. Very prevalent among racist groups, hate groups. Um, the more like ultra-conservative Christian nationalist type groups, they all believe in this stuff, right? um, QAnon believers, right? It's very, very prevalent out there, and it's almost at this point interchangeable. It's sort of like an evolution of conservative Christianity. Has taken on this lore, and you've seen this kind of thing happen before in the past, right? It's not like this is the first time that a Christian belief has absorbed um, the beliefs of their neighbors, right? Or has taken on beliefs which don't have basis in their own scriptures. For example, there's also a very prevalent belief among American Christians that, of like say Satan, and like Satan tried to defeat God and all of this other stuff, and he's the morning star and blah 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 blah, and he was cast out and the war in heaven. That's a very prevalent belief as well. None of that is actually in the Bible either. None of that has any scriptural basis. That is more taken from Paradise Lost than the actual Christian scriptures. And but there are people here that, in this country at least, who are Christians that would believe that with their dying breath, and believe that it's something that their scriptures say, when it's not. So it's not like this isn't the first time this has ever happened. You know what I mean? It's not like this is the first time that Christianity has absorbed beliefs that, like this, and has evolved. And it's sort of like the evolution of this religion. It's very interesting. Anyway, because that is ultimately what, you know, the belief in the New World Order conspiracy actually is. It is essentially a modern, um, a modern interpretation of biblical end time prophecy. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So, I see we got a few people watching. Thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it. Where did all these theories come from, right? Where did this idea that the Earth is being controlled by shadowy groups of people behind the scenes, right? Where did it come from? Well, first off, it's actually true. And when I say it's true, I don't mean that it's the Illuminati or the Bilderbergers or anything like that. There are not groups of satanic, robe-wearing cultists that get together and suck the brain juice out of children and then worship like Gog and Magog and shit like that running the world. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that rich people run the world. And rich people have always run the world, and rich people run the world according to their interests and not ours. And this is just something that's been true since we've had money, right? This is something that's just always been true, right? You know, people with money have different interests than people without money. And, since they have all the money, they make the rules, and this has always led for pretty much hundreds of years for us normal ordinary people who don't have money to kind of theorize, well, what are all these people talking about? And it's really no wonder that, it gets a little wacky because when you tend to have money, you tend to get away with things that normal ordinary poor people don't. You tend to get away with things like, I don't know, ripping people off, stealing from them. The law goes the law goes easier on you. Even when you do things like murder people, the law goes easier on you when you're rich. That's just how it is, right? Because the state is more interested in serving people who have capital. Excuse me. And it's always kind of been like that from the beginning of time. If you were a king, if you were a prince, a duke, or whatever, you know, 300 or 400 years ago, you could do whatever you wanted to a peasant, and no one's going to get in your way. And you could steal their land, and you could rape their women, and you could fucking sell their children into slavery and shit. No one's going to do shit to you. But if you're like a peasant and you look at a noble the wrong way, he could make your life really bad. That's just always been the truth, right? There doesn't have to be satanic pedophiles involved in order for that to be true. Right. Lewis ahead. Oh, hey, Leonardo TH. How you doing? Thank you for joining, man. Appreciate that. I will address that actually. The Biden thing, because actually Biden used the term New World Order recently in a speech, and I will address that a little later. But anyway, right. So it doesn't have to be, satanic pedophiles run by shape-shifting reptilian aliens in order for it to be true, right? That's what I mean when I say it's, there's some truth behind it. What isn't true is the alien satanic pedophile part. That's not true, right? There are no organized groups of movie stars and politicians kidnapping children from Haiti and sucking out their adrenochrome in order to stay young. That doesn't exist, right? That's the fantasy part about it. That's the part where people have made things up because, class struggle, right? But anyway, so there is some precursors to what, the modern conspiracy. If you were to go to any given conspiracy theorist and ask them what the New World Order is, that's what they would say. They would say something to the effect of, you know, um, shadowy groups like either the Freemasons or the Bilderbergers or, the Trilateral Commission or something like that, running the world. Sometimes they're the Skull and Bones, secret societies like that, um, you know, Aleister Crowley's society or the Thule Society or something. Or else they'll say that it's filled with Satanists or pagans or even Zionists, right? Because a big part of this is anti Semitism as well. A very big part of the New World Order conspiracy theory is anti Semitism. And we're going to get into that too, right? Um, but they would say that, one of those groups is in charge of running the world and manipulating things, and eventually they're going to take over. And that's what they would say. Where did this idea come from, though? Because this is not a new idea. This has been around in one form or another for literally hundreds of years. And earliest sort of pre like um, the earliest sort of I guess you would say permutation of this conspiracy theory started way back in 1796 or 1776, excuse me, in Bavaria, which is in Germany, right, modern day Germany, and it comes from the Illuminati, right? So um, the Illuminati is a conspiracy theory promoted by Alex Jones and lots of different people, people like David Icke, for example, um, Henry Macau, Kerry Cassidy, stuff like that. It's in one form or another. They all believe in the Illuminati, and that's supposedly the evil, shadowy group that really runs things, right? So the idea that the Illuminati is exists like that started, yeah, in 1796, and there was a real um, conspiracy. Basically, conspiracy started with like it was based on a real group called the Illuminati. They were also called the Order of the Perfectibilists. Perfectibilists, right? I really don't know how to pronounce that word. Perfectibilists, something like that. I will just copy this and post it down in the thing for you guys. Lewis the Hedgehog, thanks for joining. Dynacat, thank you for joining too. You guys are great. Dot Connector, thank you for joining also. Anyway, the Order of Perfectibilists, that's what it was right there. And they were a free thinking kind of society that was formed in 1776 in Bavaria, right? Their ideals, actually, their goals revolved around eliminating prejudice and superstition and, you know, eliminating prejudice and superstition and the abuse of political power. They actually don't sound like half bad guys, right? And so they were banned in 1787 for citing rebellion against state authority in Bavaria. And it was basically there was this prince that had a falling out with the group and then used his political connections to get this group banned, right? And all of the people involved arrested, stuff like that. And this has kind of gone around, and that's when the conspiracy theories started that they actually weren't banned, but they just went underground and then went international, right? Um, so a lot of conspiracy theories conflate them with Freemasonry, basically saying that the Freemasons and the Illuminati were the exact same thing, which is funny because in real life, the actual group, the Illuminati group from, the 18th century there was started by a guy named Adam Weishaupt because he got kicked out of Freemasonry. So basically, he didn't like Masons and they kicked him out, and so he decided to start his own sort of Freemasonry type group, but like with hookers and blackjack, right? And you know, and so it's sort of ironic that all of the conspiracy theorists like try to say that it's the exact same thing as Freemasonry because it's sort of like, a competing group with Freemasonry at the time, right? There was a book that was published here. I have the name of it. It was called Proof of the Conspiracy, right? And this was published in 1798 by a guy named John Robison, who basically said that this is the first like source that said that the Illuminati still like went underground and still existed after it was officially shut down by the Bavarian government and is working behind the scenes in order to take over the earth or whatever. So this book, Proof of Conspiracy, was actually an anti-Freemasonry book because the Masons have sort of been like, the targets of conspiracy theories for a long, long time. I mean, even all the way back then. And you can kind of see why, right? Like the Masons have always been sort of a clandestine kind of, shadowy sort of group, they don't really know what goes on there, stuff like that, and for a long time. And lots of very powerful people actually were Masons, George Washington and stuff, they were all Masons. I mean, a lot of the founding fathers were Masons, right? So it kind of makes sense that people would be suspicious of them, but I can tell you Masons are harmless. And a full disclosure, I was actually in a Masonic youth group when I was a kid. I was in a group called the Order of International Order of Malay, right, which was based on named after a knight during the Crusades who was burned at the stake and refused to turn in his compatriots, and thus was like martyred. And yeah, it was like a Masonic youth group, and we would go and do activities with Masons. And you know what they are? They're just like old men who like have coffee and stuff. And we would go and wash cars. And we would go and wash cars and raise money. And then maybe once in a while we'd like go to Disneyland or something. Like literally, there was no like secret underground like bases where they're like doing experiments on people. There was nothing like that, right? The Masons are not like, kidnapping children and drinking their blood and sacrificing goats and blah 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 blah. None of that shit happened. I probably would have like, because that stuff sounds awesome. Shit, I would have joined. If they were like doing science experiments on people and like shooting them up with like fucking sheep DNA and all of that stuff and putting chips in people's heads. I mean, that sounds like fucking shit. I would have been all into that as a kid. Anyway, so yeah, Masonry, Freemasonry is basically just a fucking club. It's a club where guys get together and they hang out and they like, have dinner and smoke cigars and shit and talk about things and do business deals. And that's basically what being a Mason is. And then, you raise money for homeless kids and that kind of thing. So it's fucking harmless. Anyway, but over the centuries, all these conspiracy theories about them have sprang up, trying to say that they're like, filled with Satanists and that kind of thing, because they have rituals and etc. and stuff like that. And there really is nothing to any of that stuff. Um, Anyhow, not to say that there have never been, Masons who are criminals or something. I mean, yeah, there have been, but I mean, the organization itself is like people conflate it with like Hydra or something. Like they think it's some kind of comic book supervillain organization that like runs everything and can like murder people and is using like space lasers to start forest fires and stuff. And it's not a thing that doesn't exist. That's like fantasy. You know, they're not like they're not fucking taking over the earth. Anyhow, so that was sort of the first, yeah, one of the early groups. And the thing is, nowadays, the membership of the Illuminati is ever changing. Everyone who's ever been famous ever is supposedly a member. Supposedly you can't get famous in Hollywood unless you join. So people go through and they find clues to all of this stuff and they say, oh, Jay-Z covered his eye once in a music video, that means he's part of the Illuminati. And Tupac made a record called the Killamandi or whatever, and that's like because they murdered him because he was going to spill the beans and et cetera. And it's like, yeah, that's it all sort of feeds in back upon itself. This is all stuff that like content creators exploit in order to get clicks and views. None of this shit really exists, right? But depending on who you talk to, the membership includes every single rich and famous person ever, every politician, except for Donald Trump, of course. Donald Trump was the only one who was fighting against it, supposedly. It's like the one like actual corrupt like criminal guy that they like, the person who they is undeniably fucking corrupt and criminal somehow gets casted as the hero. It's ridiculous. You know, there are even versions of this conspiracy theory where aliens are the ones who are really behind the Illuminati, like shape-shifting reptilian aliens from another dimension. And that's where the whole adrenochrome thing, where like QAnon says they kidnap children and suck out their brain juice. That's where that started. It started with the reptilians. People like David Icke and stuff claiming that reptilian aliens have to suck the blood of children in order to survive or whatever. That's where that's from. That was the beginning of that little branch of the conspiracy, right? So yeah, no truth to any of that shit. Another very famous book called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, uh, very famous anti-Semitic book written in the early 20th century, promoted by noted anti-Semites such as, Henry Ford and Adolf Hitler. Also, that book did a lot to contribute to this lore for the New World Order. It's the learned Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and was a pamphlet and basically outlined an international cabal of Jewish, I guess, overlords who are attempting to take over the earth. And the pamphlet sort of goes through each step about how you can take over the governments and control the media and control banks and everything like that. Um, Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? You kind of hear this exact same shit coming out of like right wing, especially hate groups and stuff. They say this even today. If you go on Infowars or something, you'll get Alex Jones saying how they all control the media. How many times have you heard on like 4chan or something, some fucking like neo-Nazi guy getting up there and saying the Jews control the media, right? It's like these are sort of ideas, these are conspiracies that have been around for literally centuries at this point. There's That's the problem with bad ideas, especially when it comes to racism, is that they never die. Bad ideas never die. They just get recycled to the next generation who's never heard of them. And that's why it's very important to kind of like stand up and be, armed with the facts so that you can counter dangerous misinformation like this because, you know, the actual tangible result of conspiracy theories like this is death. It's people's lives being ruined because they believe this ridiculous bullshit, right? People's lives being ruined in more ways than just them, going out and murdering people or something or engaging in mass shootings or whatever. You know, this conspiracy theories like this can really tear apart people's lives and separate families and stuff like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. Anyway, so yeah, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I did an entire stream on that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But it's bullshit. It was debunked as early as 1921, but was still spread around by anti-Semitic people. Henry Ford, in particular, printed the entire thing in his private newspaper. Like apparently Henry Ford had a fucking newspaper, and he printed the entire thing there, and then like sold copies of it. So he was a true believer, right? Adolf Hitler also quoted the Protocols of the Elders of Zion in Mein Kampf. It was a big influence on him as well. So, and it's still spread even today, even 100 years later. People still believe it. You'll still find references to it on like Nazi websites, right? In groups with like banned literature and stuff, right? And you'll still see people believing the same things that it said. Like I said, the Jews control the media, for example, right? The idea of an international cabal of Jewish bankers. How many times have you heard that? Sometimes they'll try to strip out the anti-Semitism and they won't say Jewish bankers. They'll just say elites. They'll say, oh, these Hollywood elites. Who are they really talking about? Right? It's just a way of trying to sanitize it to make it sound less, you know, I guess hateful, right? But it's still the same fucking thing. It's the same, it's essentially just a conspiracy, an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. The same bad ideas recycled over and over with a fresh coat of paint on them. So another group that heavily promoted the NWO was the John Birch Society. So for those of you out there who have never heard of these guys, they are a rather famous sort of like conspiracy theory, like advocacy type group, you know, of anti-communist group for sure. And that's kind of how they got their start. So the John Birch Society was actually named after a guy named John Birch, who in World War II was stationed in China and was murdered by the Chinese communists right after the end of World War II. And the story goes something like he basically was ordered to go get some, because this was right when the war ended, and like the Japanese were like occupying China, and he went to go meet with the Chinese communist leadership. And when he met with them, he wouldn't surrender his sidearm because he was armed, right? He wouldn't surrender his sidearm, and so the Chinese communists fucking executed him because they're not gonna let you go speak to their leadership with a gun or whatever. And supposedly a fight broke out or whatever, and they shot him and they executed him and then like bayoneted his body and fucked him up bad. So he died. And um, this John Birch Society was started shortly afterwards in his name. So the actual guy John Birch has nothing to do with the society that has decided to use his name in order to like fuck up people's minds. Right. Um, but they were a very rabid anti-communist group. I mean, if you remember back in the like they started in 1958, this is like right around the time of like McCarthyism and stuff like that. There was a big Red Scare going on in the United States at that time. People were afraid of nuclear war with the Russians. And there was all kinds of like, you know, all of these movements of people saying like, oh, the communists are going to invade or whatever, or they're going to subvert, they're sending agents to subvert our government, that kind of thing. There was a lot of fear out there. People were building like, nuclear bomb shelters and stuff, and things like that in their backyards, that kind of thing, right? And so they have peaked, and well, they believed in a lot of like really ultra super conservative things, right? And you could kind of say that the John Birch Society was like their influence on conservative politics really can't be understated, right? A lot of the things that, they promoted in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, which sounded like wacky and ridiculous back then, are like mainstream, like conservative beliefs nowadays, right? For example, they were extremely anti-immigrant, like extremely anti-immigrant. See, that might surprise people to think that, that really always wasn't um, a stance, like a conservative stance. Like there was a time when conservatives thought immigrants were like, you know, positive for the United States, right? Because they are, because the more people you have in the United States, the larger your economy, right? Immigration is, especially in the United States, because we live in a country that has, zero population growth, right? Because our citizens, especially the women in the United States, are educated. And when you have an education, you're less likely to have like 17 children. You have less children because you have a job. And you have a career, and there are other things that when people go and they get educations, they want to go make money, right? Because right, because they're fucking educated, they can do it. You know what I mean? And they don't want to spend their whole lives just raising 47 children or whatever, you know, because and it has a lot to do also with migration patterns, people leaving the country and migrating to cities and things like that. And, and it also has to do with technology. And, back in the 19th century, if you're a farmer, you got to have 27 kids in order to work the farm. But if you live in a city in the 20th century, you don't have to have that many children in order to survive, shit like that, right? We're just gonna. Is there a selection tool? There's not a free form selection tool, is there? Contiguous. You know what? I'm just gonna like start cutting some of this shit out. This is taking too long. Okay. Anyway, actually, you know what we're gonna do here? Can we just like reduce the size of this a little bit? Like, see, there's still a lot of things I don't really know how to do in Citra here. Let's just cut some of this off. Like, actually, you know what? I don't really know how to do that, so I don't want to mess with it. Let's just fuck it. We'll just do it by hand. All right. Anyway, so yeah, they're very anti-immigration. So I kind of went off on a tangent there. They're also very, very, very much against the United Nations, right? And that was one of the big conspiracy theories that the John Birch Society promoted, which was sort of like a precursor to the New World Order. This idea that the conspiracy was that the United Nations was going to be subverted by communists, and that somehow we would give up our sovereignty to the United Nations, and then they would go around and take away your guns and shit like that. And that was one of the earlier examples that I could find of somebody talking about a one world government, like a one world communist government in this case, right? So that was a pretty big thing that they promoted for decades, from all the way from like their very beginning days in like 1958. They were promoting that conspiracy theory, right? Some other stuff that the John Birch people were into. Um, they opposed the civil rights movement in the 1960s. So no surprise there that, they've always kind of had a racist element involved in their groups as well. You know, um, they were they were opposed to OSHA when OSHA was formed in the 1970s, the Occupational Safety Health and Health Administration. Basically, OSHA are the people that make sure that where you work, there's safety protocols, and that you know you get breaks and stuff like that. You get your 15 minutes and your hour lunch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You got to wear hard hats, that kind of thing. That's OSHA, right? We're just fuck this. We're just deleting this. This is just taking forever. So, yeah, they were against that, right? They were, they promoted quack cancer cures, and it's really, really telling, like how much of what these people like believed and set up is like so mainstream now. Like you think like I mean, do you think like people like when we had the Rona hit and there were all these like conservatives talking about things like hydroxychloroquine and shit like that, like that kind of that mentality is not unique. You know what I mean? It's been around for like decades. Like wacky conservatives like promoting cancer cures and all of this stuff, and like saying things like, oh, the FDA is withholding medicine and blah blah blah. It goes back literally fucking decades. And it really does not surprise me to find that out. To find out that that has always been like a part of the more like wackaloon branch of conservatism, has always been into shit like that. Let's just delete all that. Actually, yeah, you know what we really do need to just like crop this whole thing. Can I just like select something like that? And then, no, 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 that's not good enough. Damn it. I want to do it right. See, it's not as precise, I notice. Like, I'm trying to. Shit, that's not very precise at all. Fuck it. I'm not going to worry about it. See, in Photoshop, you can just select it and then hit crop, and then the whole thing will crop, but not going to worry about that. Anyway, all right, let's just go back to what we were doing. So yeah, John Birch Society, pretty bad. They're against anti-free trade, like, groups, things like NAFTA and, CAFTA and the Free Trade Americas, whatever, because they see that as legislation which removes American sovereignty. They might have a point for some of those things. They want to dismantle the Federal Reserve, which is because they see the Federal Reserve as an organization which has extra governmental powers, right? And and is also a tool for groups like the evil Jewish bankers in order to, like, um, circumvent, like, governmental, like, oversight, right? They might have a point there a little bit too. I mean, here's the thing about this is that things like the Federal Reserve and trade agreements and stuff like that, yeah, those things have been abused in many ways in order to screw over, the working class and stuff like that. But they're not run by international, like, cabals of Jewish communists. See, that's the thing. Like, because there is a group among, as a little side note here, there is a group among the less wacky left who sort of buy into this stuff a little bit. And, maybe they won't go all the way and claim that it's like being run by, you know, shape-shifting reptilian aliens or whatever. But there is sort of like this strain among leftists as well of this, like, well, the elites run everything, stuff like that. And it's like you got to be careful about the things that you promote. You know what I mean? Got to be careful. You got to make sure that the stuff that you believe and the things you promote and the things the information you spread is based in facts and reality. And, because it can really damage people. It can really damage people psychologically, and they can go out and do very bad things. I mean, like I said before, how many mass shootings have we found where people believe in some form of this conspiracy one way or another? Right? How many acts of violence? How many like people who have, like, even just not counting stuff like that, how many people who have become alienated from their families because they, you know, fall too far down the rabbit hole, stuff like this, and they can't tell fantasy from reality anymore, right? So, just things to be aware of. Be aware of, the stuff you believe. It's important for the things that one, at least I think so. I think it's important for the things for me that I believe to be actually true and not just based on some conspiracy theories. So, anyhow, um, the John Birch Society believes that Earth Day was a communist plot. So this is the kind of people we're talking about, like extremely super ultra conservative. That was the John Birch Society. And, they're still around. They are not as prevalent or popular as they used to be. They sort of peaked in the 1970s, but they're definitely around. They definitely still have an influence on conservative politics. And it's just really disturbing because all of the wacky shit, like I said earlier, all of the wacky things that the John Birch Society promoted has become mainstream. These are now the things that the mainstream conservatives in the United States actually believe. They actually believe in shit like, they're very, I mean, all of that stuff I just mentioned, they're very anti-free trade agreements. They're very anti-immigration. There's a heavy undertone of racism going through the whole thing. Lots of anti-Semitism, and then you actually get mask-off wackaloons like people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example. Who actually did believe in the whole space lasers thing, and you know, has, you know, videos of herself actually like, you know, espousing like these sorts of conspiracy theories and with a straight face, you know. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was like into fucking QAnon and all that, right? Probably still is, and is just, you know, is toning it down because now she's like an elected official and she realizes it makes her look like a fucking wackaloon. But anyway, so yeah, what time we at? We're actually kind of ahead of the game here a little bit. Why don't we read some comments before we move on? Because we're about what time is it? 11:40. We might actually end up ending this a little early today, but let's read some comments. What do we got here? Leonardo TH. Sadly, the New World Order theory is true. Biden said something about a New World Order recently. All politicians receive orders from BlackRock and the World Economic Forum. So, I do want to address the Biden thing. So, first off, the BlackRock, that's not true. No, there is no group that orders politicians to do anything, right? If they did, now here's the thing, right? Why do I say that? Because if the world actually were run by a coherent group with a plan, then things would be a lot different than in real life, right? They really would. So there's a thing called the Florida Guidestones. I don't know if you guys have heard about the Florida Guidestones before. They are a group of I'm gonna do a stream exploring them in greater detail, but kind of to sum up, they're a group of these. It's like a monument that a guy put up in Florida, right? Or Georgia, not the Florida Guidestones, the Georgia Guidestones, excuse me. And on these, there's sort of like these pillars, and on the sides of these pillars are what has come to be adopted by the New World Order conspiracy theory people as the guiding principles of the Illuminati. And if you read it, it's actually a very pro-environmental message. You know, like it talks about reducing the world's population to a manageable level. I think it gives a number of 500 million or something, which is, you know, that's way too low. I mean, you know, but there is actually some truth to that. You know, overpopulation actually is going to be a problem. You know, like within my lifetime, we're probably going to hit 10 billion people if we haven't hit that already. I mean, last time I checked, we were at like 7.5 billion. So it's only a matter of time. You know, the more people you have, the less resources you have to go around, and the shittier the quality of life gets for most of the people. You know, you wonder why there are people in Africa and Asia living on $2 a day and stuff like that, going through garbage to survive, that kind of thing. It's like, well, because there's not enough fucking resources, and there really never will be if we stay with the same economic system that we have now, right? You know, there are other ways of there are other economic systems that would be more you know, fair in order to distribute resources, but that's never going to fucking happen. It's never going to happen without a violent revolution, and the chances of that actually happening are zero. So, you know, this is what's really going to happen. What's really going to happen is that more and more poor people are going to be born and they're going to live shitty lives, and it's going to get worse and worse and more polluted and gross as we consume all of the available resources and pollute, and all the animals die, and then hopefully at some point a few hundred years from now mankind gets its shit together and manages to fucking, like, you know, save life on earth. That's This will be all years and years after we're all dead. Who knows? Either that's going to happen or we're all going to like collapse into like a Mad Max style dystopia, right? But if the world really was being run by a just any group of people who were in charge of things, we'd be seeing a lot different results, you know. If the world really was being run by the group of people that put out the Georgia Guidestones, there would be lots of shit going on right now. There would be things like depopulations. There would be things like um, environmental policies being passed in order to curb pollution, stuff like that. Stuff that's not happening. It's not happening. It's so bad that, here's the thing, right? Opposition to environmental policies is so staunch in our government, at least, that people that have nothing to do with environmental policy don't get hired because of their stance on it, right? I actually have an example of that. There was a woman that recently wanted to go to was nominated to the Federal Reserve. Let me see, Federal Reserve withdraw. I can't remember her name, but it was Federal Reserve nominee. Nominee. I can spell. There we go. This was her name, Sarah Bloom Raskin. Withdraws her nomination from the Federal Reserve, right? Her candidacy. So basically, the way it works is the president can nominate people to the Federal Reserve. I'm not going to I'll just copy this link and put it down here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Um, Copy link. Come on, copy the fucking link. Copy link address. Thank you. Here's what I'm talking about, right? So this person in that link I just put down there was nominated to the Federal Reserve by Joe Biden, right? And she expressed a pro-environmental agenda. She said something to the effect of, I want to use my power at the Federal Reserve in order to promote environmental, sound environmental policy and do something about global warming. Paraphrasing. That was enough to get her kicked, right? As someone in the Federal Reserve, she really wouldn't have much power in the way of influencing actual environmental policy. Not really, right? Just the fact that she said that during her confirmation hearings or whatever was enough to get her kicked from that, and she withdrew her thing. So that's how far the opposition goes. Like we can't even like nominate people who express a desire to do something about the severe environmental catastrophe that we're currently facing. We can't even like even if they just say they want to do something about it, they get kicked out. So it's like no, that tells me that there is no group of shadowy people controlling all the shit out there who are going to like depopulate the earth in order to save the whales. Like it's fucking not going to happen. It's not real. Anyway, um but yeah, I did want to talk about Joe Biden's comment. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there. Sorry about that. I'm actually kind of tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Um, Joe Biden's comment recently about the New World Order. Um, that was kind of a poor choice of words, right? What he meant was basically that the United States is declining, is essentially the way I interpret what he said. Basically saying that, hey, the US is starting to not be as prominent of a leader in world affairs anymore, which is something that's been happening for quite some time, which was really exasperated over the last 5 years. You know, Donald Trump really fucked up our stance as leaders of the free world, right? He did lots and lots of damage to that. And now basically countries like China are becoming, ascendant, right? They're essentially going about globalization in a different way than we are. The United States will do things like, invest in other countries and then prop up governments in those countries in order to protect their investments. That's kind of how the United States engages in imperialism. And China is doing a much more, uh, you know, they're sharing much more of the profits with the countries that they invest in. China is doing things like, hey, they're going to like say they're going to like countries in Africa and stuff and like building their freeway systems for them. or building bridges or putting in telephone systems or electrical plants, stuff like that, saying, "Hey, we'll build these things for you." And then what happens? Then they become part of the Chinese sphere of economic influence, when the United States isn't. And this is something basically Joe Biden's basically saying, with all of the stuff in Ukraine and the Russians, Russia is now declining faster, and he's saying there's going to be a new world order, a new order of essentially ruling countries. And what did he say immediately after that? He said there's going to be a new sort of, and what he's basically talking about like economic order. And immediately after that, he said, and we need to be at the head of it, right? So he's not talking about shadowy cabals you know, of Jewish reptilians like running everything and like, covering up the fact that Bigfoot exists and shit like that. Right? He's not talking about any of that stuff. He's talking about economics. So, anyway, let's read some more comments. Dinah Cat, I got my fourth booster yesterday. It's packing quite a wallop. Oh, yeah. Fourth. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm thinking, should I get a fourth one? Wow, I didn't know that they like authorized that, like said that it was something you should do yet. I got my third personally right around Christmas, so it's only been a few months. But yeah, man, good. Glad to hear it. But yeah, fucking those vaccines, man, those things murder, dude. Those things kill. And when I say that, I mean it hurts, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it actually kills people. I'm saying it seriously hurts like hell once you get them. So yeah, I sympathize for you. But yeah, I gotta look into that. I didn't know that they were recommending that we get a fourth shot. What else we got here? Dot connector. Crony capitalism allows the ultra rich to receive special privileges from government. Exactly, exactly. That was the point I was trying to make earlier, and it's kind of always been like that. See, that's the thing. It's not just capitalism. It's that sort of cronyism, that favoritism has existed even before capitalism existed. The idea that rich people are going to look out for themselves and not us is universal, which is just sort of how it's been forever. And it makes perfect sense that the people getting screwed would invent reasons like that, especially when it comes to things like, say, a private club, a private, like a secret organization, I guess you would say, like the Freemasons or something, which really, when you say secret organization, like it's all in the way you frame it too. Like you say secret organization, that makes it sound like it's like, they're doing nefarious things. But if you say private club, it makes it sound like they go and they play cards and shit. And that's what they really do, folks. They're really just getting together and like playing cards and like drinking coffee and shit. They're not, they're not like going out and kidnapping people and putting chips in their heads and making deals with fucking UFO aliens and stuff. Anyway, real life is much more mundane and boring than everybody wants it to be, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, there's nobody out there who wants aliens to be real more than me. Nobody out there who wants superheroes and supervillains and aliens and giant monsters to be real more than me. But unfortunately, it's not real. What else we got? Lewis the Hedgehog. To those who believe the world is being ran by reptilians, I asked them, "Are you 6 years old?" No, really. Yeah, yeah. That's that. I see. I mean, the thing is, I used to be really, really into this conspiracy theory shit, like a lot, back in the early aughts, and but I never really got that far. Like, I never believed in the shape shifting reptilians thing because it's silly. It's silly, and then you start thinking about it, and you start seeing all the parallels to like fucking anti-Semitism and stuff, and that's a different story. But even before that, like I was just like, what? Like I remember watching David Icke videos in like 2004, you know, and thinking like, because back when I was still sort of, on the on the end of this stuff. I was starting to come out of it by then. But, I remember watching David Icke videos in like 2004, and he's claiming that like the Queen of England is a fucking alien and all this shit. And I'm just like, are you fucking serious? Like, you know, and then you see videos of like people use After Effects in order to put like lizard eyes on, celebrities or whatever, and it's like obviously fucking fake, and like, all right, this is enough of this shit. And yeah, the thing is, people believe it because it fits their worldview. It fits their like I said, religious worldview especially. Because if you actually do believe in, the Bible and stuff, then, if you're actually like a Christian in the United States at least, then part of that belief is that the world is sort of like being run by evil, you know, at this moment in time at least. And you are going to be oppressed and all that, and you're going to go through tribulations, blah, 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 blah. And, it makes perfect sense then that the people who actually run things would be, benefiting from the forces of darkness. And that's sort of like, that's really the reason why so many religious people believe in stuff like this, like why it's so prevalent among Christians, of all stripes, but especially like American Protestants, like American evangelical Protestants. Like it's like almost universal among that like demographic. Let's see what else we got here. What time we got? All right, we're at 12. Let's read a little more, and then we'll read some more comments before we end it. Let's see. Where were we? Okay, so we kind of went through the history of it. We talked about the Illuminati, we talked about the John Birch Society, we talked about the Protocols of Elder Zion. Let's talk a little bit about NWO conspiracies today. So, um, basically, we have these sort of common Illuminati myths, right? Myths that one thing that you'll see a lot all over the place is that this shadowy group that runs everything and is a super secret and murders people for like getting too close to the truth and all that. They do all this, but they also can't help putting clues in broad daylight for like people to discover. And I never really understood that part myself. The idea that you could run this like clandestine sort of like, you know, um, secret organization with wide-reaching goals that have been going on for centuries and all that stuff, but you're like also compelled to put like a secret message in the latest like episode of The Simpsons that like exposes your like entire plan. And nowhere have I been able to see anywhere an adequate explanation for that, you know. No one's ever told me why. They say, oh yeah, well look at this, this like here's an example. Let me go over here. Let me go to my images. And can I just like do a full page? Ah, there we go. Okay, here's my little images that I've captured for this, right? Let me turn on my monitor here. Here's my laptop window. Okay. So this of course is the Great Seal of the United States, right? And this is one of the big things that you know, these conspiracy theorists always point to, because it actually says New World Order, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order, right? In Greek, in Latin, and they're talking about this eye at the top of the pyramid or whatever, right? And this is on the back of the dollar bill, and this has been a thing that all of the New World Order people will talk about as proof of one of these little sort of Easter eggs that the conspiracists, I guess, or the people who are involved in the conspiracy have laid out for us, right? So in real life, this is what's called the Eye of Providence. It was not created by Freemasons, right? Although a lot of the founding fathers were Freemasons, the founding fathers who created the seal, the Great Seal of the United States, which is what this is. This is the Great Seal of the United States. The people who created this were not Masons. The eye actually refers to the eye of providence, which is essentially the eye of God. And what it means is that the United States is going to be the head of a new world order. And, when they say New World Order, they mean basically the United States has a divine destiny. And that was a big thing back, even today, manifest destiny, right? Especially at that time, in the late 18th and the early 19th centuries, this idea that the United States was a special land that was ordained by God in order to go out and spread democracy and truth and mom and apple pie and shit like that. And you even get, this idea of American exceptionalism is very prevalent even today. I mean, you know, every single politician out there that you talk to is always going to say America is exceptional. We have this idea that we are the best and we've been the best, and this is even extended to a lot of politicians will say that this is because we have basically divine providence behind us, and that's what this is. That's where this comes from. So it has nothing to do with the Illuminati or a shadowy group of whatever of anything. It's basically just like, you know, the seal of the United States essentially means God is watching us and has our back. That's what that means. But people have taken this, they've misinterpreted because they don't know what this means. And now every time any celebrity does a triangle shape with their hands, like Beyonce here. Is this Beyonce or is this Rihanna? I think this is Beyonce. I don't know. I don't listen to her music. Every time a celebrity does a little triangle shape with their hands like that, or here's Jay-Z doing it, people think that, oh, that must mean that they're a member of the Illuminati. That must mean that, and especially and it fits in with the conspiracy because, well, they're rich and famous, and you can't supposedly get rich and famous without being a member of the conspiracy, and that's why they're doing these secret code signs and stuff. This kind of goes back to Freemasonry too, because Freemasons have like secret like handshakes and that kind of thing, and they have symbols and all that. And that they would leave for each other and etc. Blah 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 blah. And people have read nefarious things into these signs and symbols when in real life it really doesn't mean anything. You know, why is Jay-Z making a triangle with his hand? I don't know, but it doesn't have anything to do with any kind of like, you know, group of like fucking secret Jewish banker overlords. It doesn't exist, like, because that shit doesn't exist. So it's like, I think even in some of these pictures, he might even be trolling people because he's fully aware of you know, fully aware of the conspiracy theories at this point. I saw another one with Katy Perry. Like, Katy Perry had a video where she had like the Eye of Ra or something over one of her eyes. Every time a celebrity covers one of their eyes, people will claim that's a New World Order conspiracy thing as well. It's yeah. Like I said, folks, there's like entire content creators who do nothing but go through videos and podcasts and movies and all they do is they just talk about shit like this constantly. They talk about the little Easter eggs that you see everywhere and the Simpsons predicted 9/11 and all this other baloney. And it's become a fucking cottage industry almost. And the disturbing thing is you'll go on like Twitter or you'll go on like fucking Instagram or something, and these people will have like, you know, 4 million subscribers or whatever. And it's like, God damn, I'm in the wrong business. I should have been a grifter. I should have been a conspiracy theorist grifter. I'd probably be a millionaire by now if I didn't have any integrity. I can make up bullshit too. It's just, I don't know. I just have like that little thing called like fucking a conscience, which keeps me from exploiting people, I guess. Another example here is a pretty famous, the square and compass. Um, this is a Masonic symbol, you know. which is like a pyramid and stuff like that. And people conflate this with like an evil satanic thing, you know. And yeah, there's there may be some esoteric meaning behind it, whatever, blah blah blah. The Masons are sort of a pseudo spiritual organization. They don't exactly enforce any specific religion, but you have to have a belief in God. Like they don't allow atheists to join, you know. And yeah, who knows, but it's like people see this stuff and that's the thing. It's all become part of the lore, So now every time you see anything that even looks like a pyramid anywhere in the world, people flip out and there's even conspiracy theorists who will go through like say corporate logos and things like that and try to pull out, like oh the Procter and Gamble logo is a satanic symbol and shit like that. And it's like stuff that just has no fucking basis in reality. Like anyway, couple more that I saw here. Where's my mouse? There it is. This is another one. The Ouroboros is a very you know prevalent, I guess you would say, occultist symbol. This is another one that people are always so now whenever they see something that even resembles this, they will say that that is part of the conspiracy. That video is part of the conspiracy, that band or whatever, that actor or something like that. And it doesn't even have to be an actual Ouroboros. It just has to be something that looks like an Ouroboros. It just has to be like a ring, and then maybe there's a bump on it, and they say, "See, that's secretly an Ouroboros, and that must mean that Tom Hanks is kidnapping children or something because he has a ring on his hand." Like ridiculous. Um, and of course you have Baphomet here, right? Baphomet is a pretty one of the more well-known sort of occultist kind of symbols, right? The origin of Baphomet itself is actually pretty interesting. Um, Long story short, it's a corruption of Muhammad, is what Baphomet is, right? We can get into that a little bit later, but it was basically, sort of like it's become adopted by like Satanist groups and stuff like that. When in real life in the Middle Ages and that kind of thing, it was more of an occultist thing. There really wasn't any sort of real life Satan worshiping like cult like that has really ever existed. Like the witch cults and stuff like that, that's all kind of made up bullshit too. None of that stuff really existed. But anyway, Baphomet has been sort of adopted by modern day Satanists, right? To sort of act as their kind of like, religious symbol. And you'll see people kind of going around trying to find hidden Baphomets everywhere. For example, here's the Starbucks logo. And if you turn it upside down, it kind of looks like a goat, doesn't it? You got a goat's head here. Here's the Starbucks mermaid who has her boobies hanging out. I guess this is the old logo. And the two tails sort of look like a goat head, right? So that's like just an example. Like here's another one. The other modern Starbucks logo sort of looks vaguely like a goat head when turned upside down, right? There's entire YouTube channels where that's all they do. There's entire YouTube channels and blogs and especially when it comes to like other sort of like right wing like YouTube and Twitter knockoff kind of websites where there's just people like this is like all they do is just find stuff like this and point it out everywhere. Anytime there's a pyramid, anytime there's like demonic or goth evil imagery, which you see all the time in music videos and stuff like that, or movies or whatever. They claim that that's like this is like a hidden thing put there by the NWO or the Illuminati or whatever, right? There's a very there was a very famous conspiracy theorist named William Cooper who was actually killed in 2000. Um, but he was one of the early guys to sort of expound on this idea that corporate logos are like have hidden messages in them, right? He wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse back in the day where he talked about stuff like this. He talked about the Illuminati and he talked about He was another guy that was one of the first guys to sort of link aliens in with the New World Order, like basically saying that certain governments were in contact with aliens and they were making deals with them and stuff like that, and it was really aliens that are like running the world. This predates David Icke. David Icke was the first guy to do like the reptilian shapeshifter kind of people, and like William Cooper was like one of the first guys to claim that, like, basically alien grays were the ones that were running the show. Later on in his life, he sort of um, claimed that they were actually demonic entities and not really aliens. And that's a very pretty widespread belief now as well in Christian circles, that aliens are actually demons. I'm thinking of making an upcoming stream all about that, all about the alien demonic highway, I guess you would say, right? Because that we could really spend a good 3 or 4 streams just on that. There's so much material. See, that's the thing about this. There's so much material for all of this, and there's so many different aspects to this conspiracy theory that it's you really can't cover it all in one 2-hour live stream. There's just too much out there. We're gonna have to do it in pieces. Um, anyway, but yeah, William Cooper. He was also, he would search corporate logos. He would claim things like that, like even things like stop signs or like the sheriff star that like a cop wears, like on his badge, that kind of thing. He would claim stuff like that was demonic and influenced by the Illuminati or whatever. The stop sign is really a sun symbol, and the sheriff star is really another sun symbol, and blah 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 blah. Right? Uh, he also believed that JFK was assassinated because JFK was about to blow the lid off of UFOs and like admit that like we were in contact with them and that they were like running things, and that's why they killed JFK supposedly. Um, Later on in his life, he got really involved with sovereign citizen and like militia movement type garbage. He was really like one of those people that started like sovereign citizens is a whole nother thing. I actually did an entire stream on it. They have sort of an alternative universe like interpretation of the law. He was one of the guys that really got the ball rolling on that too. And in 2000, he was shot dead by sheriff's deputies because they went to arrest him for tax evasion. Very funny. It's funny how a lot of right-wing politics and right-wing conspiracies and stuff like that, you know, it all revolves around not paying taxes. That's a really big thing that they all seem to share. They all seem to have that in common. This desire to just not pay taxes at all. Anyway, but of course, this has just fed into the narrative that he wasn't really killed, or that he wasn't really killed because he pulled a pistol on a sheriff and shot a sheriff in the head. He was killed because of the Illuminati trying to silence him. Which is funny because I don't know why they waited till 2000, because for years and years and years the guy would do lectures, he would write books. He had a radio show for like a decade. Like, so yeah, if there was anybody that they should have silenced way way in the past, they just waited way too long, it was William Cooper. So yeah, that's the other thing. It's like the other part of conspiracies like this is that any evidence that contradicts it gets turned around into being evidence for it. You know, it's like, oh, well, William Cooper was shot by the cops. They executed him for telling the truth. Well, he fucking shot a cop in the head. What do you want them to do? Like, bake him cookies or whatever? Right? And then they go, so then you counter with that. It's like, yeah, well, he fucking murdered he tried to kill a police officer. And then they counter back and say, see, that's just part of the reason why it's all a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. And, it becomes anything that you say that contradicts the conspiracy becomes evidence for the conspiracy. And anyone who doesn't believe it Anyone who does what I'm doing right now and tries to debunk it or explain where it came from, right, becomes a member of the conspiracy. It's like, well, he obviously must be part of it. They must be paying him to say this. He must be compromised. He's just a shill. He's shilling for the Illuminati or whatever, right? I can't tell you how many times I have encountered that, and I'm also ashamed to say I can't tell you how many times I said the exact same thing myself. Back when I was a believer in this stuff, I used the shill gambit as well because, it's easier to accuse somebody who doesn't believe in being part of the conspiracy. It's easier than doing that than actually like taking the time to reason and like say, well, what is this guy talking about? Right? It's much easier to turn around and be like, see, they're just paying you. You're part of it. You're taking money from your fucking corporate overlords or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, and this is I admit it. I admit it. I was, at one point in my life, I mean, I was very young, right? Young and naive, and I didn't know how the world works, but this is how conspiracy theories like this get their infect people. They prey on people who don't know any better, who don't have the information, and part of that is because our education system in this country is so fucking horrible, you know. But the other part of that is because bad ideas are attractive. They're they're attractive because they're easier than actually learning the actual truth. It's much easier to just attribute everything bad that happens in the world to some force that you can fight against rather than understanding that there is nobody in charge and the world is a much scarier place because of it, because of the fact that there is nobody in charge and the people who are in charge can't do anything about the problems that we're facing, or either they can't or they refuse to. Right? And that's the scary reality of Earth, of the human race, is that we're digging our own grave every fucking day, right? Anyway, the biggest sort of modern interpretation, though, of the New World Order is, of course, QAnon. Because that's really all QAnon is. All QAnon is just a repackaging of existing New World Order conspiracy theories. Um, I know this because I have magazines and books from the 1990s that say all the same shit that you get out of QAnon. All of it. Right. The fact that celebrities and stuff are, the idea that celebrities are in it, are into it, and that there's a shadowy group of people running things who may, are separate for one reason or another, whether they're being controlled by aliens, whether they're really like part of the Merovingians, like they have a secret bloodline that goes back to Jesus Christ or whatever, or whether they're like whatever fucking reason, or whether if it's like the Illuminati from the, 17th century or some shit, you know, all of that, the adrenochrome thing, all of that. It all predates QAnon. That's the thing you got to remember is that QAnon didn't invent any of this shit. They just prepackaged stuff that already existed, right? And I know it. I know it because I have the materials. I have the like I said, I was really into this stuff, you know, for years. And it's basically just like the exact same thing except with a new coat of paint on it. Right? And then everybody, the thing is that, well, this is the first time people have ever been hearing of this shit because it's all been, conspiracy theory stuff has all been fringe for all this time. You had to actually go out before in the past and search this stuff down, you know, back before it became prevalent on social media, you know, you had to go to a bookstore and go to the conspiracy theory section and actually buy a book on conspiracy theories and read it. You had to do that, and even when the internet became a thing that most people had in their homes, in the late 90s, conspiracy theories and stuff like this were still very fringe. You had to search for stuff like that, what in the web 1.0 days, you know. Nowadays, you don't have to do that. Nowadays, you just go to Facebook and it's all right there. And even sometimes it will ping you with notifications on your phone and shit. Oh, here's a guy that I follow on Instagram posted something else. Oh, here's a picture of him showing a picture of Katy Perry with her hand over her eye. She must be fucking, she must have sold her soul to Satan in order to be, you know, a rock star or whatever, right? So now it's like it's easier than ever for bad ideas to flourish, and they're just the same bad ideas over and over and over. Anyway, so yeah, QAnon. We did an entire stream on QAnon, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But basically, the whole idea behind QAnon, it is the idea that it's the New World Order, but repackaged into sort of a final fight kind of thing that you know everybody can I guess the way they present QAnon, they present it in such a way that, it's sort of like the end times are happening now, and there's like a secret group of people led by Donald Trump that are trying to oppose the evil clandestine Illuminati or whatever, right? And Q, of course, was supposed to be somebody who was in the government who had access to, secret government info, top secret info, shit like that, who would do these things called Q drops. And then, Q, I mean, we're all pretty much familiar with this if you've been following any of this stuff at all, because it's been in the news. It's been, pretty prevalent over the last couple of years, right? That's the thing is that, even your grandmother knows what fucking QAnon is now. And that's kind of the problem because people like our grandparents, people in that generation, tend to be the ones who actually believe in this shit the most, right? They're the ones who are following QAnon. It's the older, ultra conservative Republicans, right, are the biggest, like, sort of group that follows QAnon now. And essentially, it's the New World Order, right? Um, anyway, yeah, so Q, of course, started on 4chan, and then it went to 8chan, and then it's pretty much been exposed. There was a guy named Ron Watkins who was one of the IT guys behind 8chan who most likely didn't start QAnon, but probably took it over after the original QAnon poster like stopped, right? And there's evidence for that. Like I said, I did an entire stream on it, but it was either him or him and his father, who would continue keep it going. And the speculation is because they kept it going for money because well, partially because they were having fun trolling people, but also they were getting, like, millions of unique hits every day. Like, the way you measure web traffic, you have hits, which is like how many times your website comes up, and then you have uniques, which is this is how many unique visitors you get. And what you want more unique visitors because that results in higher returning traffic, and then the more traffic you get, the more ads you can sell, stuff like that. And you know, the theory is that, well, they kept it going because they were getting like fucking millions of uniques every day and making a shitload of money, right? So, the thing is that once, you know, Donald Trump lost the election and the storm didn't happen, right? Which the storm, was supposedly the storm was going to be the event where Donald Trump was going to go arrest all the Democrats and child molesters and stuff finally and execute them all publicly, blah blah blah. And the storm never happened. Once all that shit went down, Q goes silent. Q hasn't made a post in, like, you know, like a year now, right? More than a year at this point. But people still fucking believe it. People still believe it, and it's because it's become part of their religion. There was, like, last August, people went to Delaney Plaza in Texas, which is where JFK was assassinated, and sort of camped out there expecting JFK to come back. like the second coming of JFK. I'm not even kidding. And when you hear this stuff, it sounds so ridiculous. It sounds like a cult, you know? It sounds like the Heaven's Gate people to me, is what it sounds like. It sounds like fucking, some deranged, wacky cult. Like if I were to see a movie where people were like going and waiting for JFK to come back to life, like I would think that that was like a comedy, because it's so fucking ridiculous. But in real life, people went there. People went to this, Delaney Plaza, waited around for JFK to guess to what I don't know, essentially what ascend down from heaven or some shit, I guess, for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they like camped out there and stuff. And people left their jobs, people left their families to go wait for JFK to come back because I guess supposedly JFK was going to be on Trump's side, and then after JFK comes back, and then also JFK Jr., they were going to go and finally the storm was going to happen, and they were going to finally arrest Hillary Clinton and throw her in jail and shoot her in the back of the head, and fucking I don't know, like get to like throw Nancy Pelosi in jail or some shit. Like seriously, like this is what they were waiting for, and it never happened. And it was like for fucking like people were waiting there for like weeks and weeks and weeks. It's just so fucking ridiculous. You know, this is why these things are dangerous, man. It's like essentially at this point it's become a religion. It's sort of tacked itself on to, like I said, Christianity. you know, um, One of my favorite little conspiracies that the QAnon people invented, I guess, that they came up with was the um let's see, was the Wayfair human trafficking conspiracy, right? That one was hilarious. And if you don't know what the Wayfair human trafficking thing was, basically on Wayfair.com, they sell furniture, right? I'm actually going to buy this purple couch there. It's awesome. This purple couch, it looks like a total pimp couch. Anyway, getting that for my new house. And there were these cabinets that had the names of like female names, like there'd be a name like, it'd be Alice, or another one that would say like, Polly or something like that. And they were like super expensive, and people were wondering, well, what is this? What are these cabinets for, right? And this sort of conspiracy theory popped up that the Wayfair cabinets were actually like a cover for human trafficking. And if you ordered, say, for example, like an Alice, cabinet, you were really buying like a child, and it was all code. And depending on who you talk to, either it was all a cover or they would actually send you the cabinet with the child inside of it, you know? And I'm just like, what? But this is what really makes me like, this is why I think this one is just like the funniest shit ever. Because anybody can just order one of these cabinets and see if a kid shows up. You can actually test this one out. This one is falsifiable. You can actually go and say, okay, I'm gonna buy the Cassandra cabinet from Wayfair and see if a child slave shows up at my door. Nobody ever fucking did that, right? I mean, this is what I don't get. This is why I don't understand this shit. Like, you would think you would test that out, right? If you actually believed that these people were selling children inside of furniture that they will ship to your fucking door, then why don't you do it and like rescue the child? You know what I mean? Why don't you do it, prove the conspiracy, rescue the child, and blow the lid off the whole fucking thing? I guess that just didn't occur to anybody. You know, that's another thing you got to remember about conspiracy theorists, folks, is that they're fucking lazy. That's the other thing. Conspiracy theorists are lazy. They don't, like they always tell you, like one thing if you ever try to argue with a conspiracy theorist, they always say shit like, "Oh, well, go do the research, go do your own work, whatever. I did the research, I know about it." No, they didn't. They didn't do any fucking research because if they did the research, they would know it was bullshit. Okay, research to them is going on Facebook and reading some shit that some people posted, watching some YouTube videos. That's fucking research, okay? Nobody, like that, taking this Wayfair thing as an example, right? All they could do, if you didn't want to like actually order a cabinet, I don't know, let's say you couldn't afford it or something, right? there's lots of other ways you can investigate a claim like that to see if it's actually real. You can track down where do the cabinets come from, right? You can do that. You can start calling warehouses and seeing where, if I buy this, where does it come from? Where is there an actual warehouse here? Where does it like, the chain of custody of the cabinet or whatever? Like, who's working for them? These people have to have like payrolls and stuff like that, right? They have to pay taxes. They have to like, when the guy delivering the truck, is he in on the conspiracy theory? Like, there's all kinds of things that an actual investigator can uncover, and often do in real cases of human trafficking. This is a lot of human trafficking cases are uncovered by things like this. For example, like say when people are smuggled in like, you know, containers and stuff from like China. A lot of those things are uncovered by looking at the chain of custody of where this container came from and discovering that there was like something fishy going on with it. And then you get that information over to the cops and they do a raid and they find out that there's like fucking slaves in there, shit like that. That's how real life, that's how they uncover this stuff. And, these people don't do any of that. They don't engage in any of that because it's not about the actual truth. That's the other thing you got to remember. It's not about the actual truth. They don't actually give a fuck that it's actually they don't really care about human trafficking. They don't really care about the children. You know, they care about being, feeling like they're doing something heroic and feeling like they're doing something to like save the earth because, and save like, you know, to fight the bad guys because in real life they don't have any control over any of it. That's what the real motivation behind conspiracy theories is. It's not about the truth. It's not about, you know, what's really going on, or it's about pretending to fight injustice when you don't actually do anything to fight the injustice, right? Some people take it a little too far. You get that one guy that blew up a truck in Washington, D.C. You remember that dude? He was a fucking QAnon guy, you know, lost his mind because he fucking like read too much bullshit on Facebook, decided to fucking commit suicide and blow himself up in a truck. So it's really fucked up and sad, dude. I don't know. Anyway, we're actually ahead of the game, so let's read some comments and then maybe we'll end it a few minutes early today. So that's pretty much all I got, folks. Yeah, there is, of course, for the New World Order conspiracy, right? So much to it that we could really take any one little piece of this stuff and make an entire web stream on it. And maybe we'll do some more. I do want to do a stream on the alien portion of it because I find that to be really fascinating. Full disclosure, like that's what got me involved with conspiracy theories in the first place, way back in the day when I was a kid, was because I really, as a child, I was really fascinated with the idea of extraterrestrials. You know, I was really, really fascinated with that idea that of aliens, that other worlds of civilizations and people who could be like us or who could be completely 100% different than us in many different ways, and what could we learn from them, and will we go to war with them, whatever. I mean, it wasn't all just like Star Wars and shit like that. Like, of course, yeah, of course I imagine like spaceships and laser guns and transporters and things, but I also thought about, well, what would life be like, say, on another planet where everybody had, I don't know. I mean, what were their civilizations like? Do they eat the same kind of food? Do they like worship things the same way we do? Are they super smart? Are they whatever? Like this kind of stuff fascinated me as a small child. And so as I grew up, and then you discover things like, say, the Roswell conspiracy, stuff like that, and then you read about stuff like Project Blue Book, and you read about, you know, um, other types of just there's a lot of lore out there for UFOs, right? And abduction cases and that kind of thing, and Benny and Barney Hill and the Kentucky Goblins and the you know stuff like that, and the Mothman and all that stuff really fascinated me as a child, and that was sort of my gateway drug into the larger conspiracy theory like universe, you know. And so yeah, I mean, it can even, you know, I mean, take it from me, it can happen to anybody. I mean, I myself personally never actually, I mean, but the thing is, I did at one time entertain the idea that there may be some truth to the whole New World Order thing, you know, towards the end there. And then I started seeing how like anti-Semitic the whole thing is and how it just didn't make any sense. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I was out of it. But still, you know, I can kind of understand that mindset, you know, that idea that you have the super secret info that not everybody else has, that you're part of the small group of people who are like, you know, defending the rest of humanity, trying to spread the word or whatever, right? I can totally understand that because I was fucking part of that shit for, you know, a good, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Right? You know. Plus, this was right like the time that I believed it was right around the like the X Files was really popular. You know, so I'm talking like late '90s up to around 2005. Right around there is when I started to get out of it and started to you know, get a little bit of rationality. And to be honest, the one of the things that got me to be, you know, to recognize this stuff for what it is, I really have to admit was um this is going to sound stupid, but it was the atheist community on YouTube. They were the skeptic community, the atheist community. They were one of the things that got me to start thinking about stuff rationally. And I kind of owe, you know, I owe my withdrawal from the conspiracy theory mindset to this idea that, like, no, man, you know, it's important that the things you believe should be true and should be provable, and you should have evidence to back up the things you say. And if you don't have the evidence, then you shouldn't believe it. Like, you know, this is stuff they don't teach you this in school in the United States. They don't teach you about an evidence-based worldview. Like, not really. You know, in this country, we're taught to have faith in things. Right? We are. We're taught to like have faith in things and just believe in your God and believe in the government and everything's gonna like turn out okay. You know, we're not taught to like, you know, demand evidence. So anyway, enough about me. Let's read some comments here. Where were we? Let's see. What do we got here? Lewis the Hedgehog, Dynacat, you never heard of warping space and time. It is being researched right now. What were you guys talking about? What were you guys talking about? Dynacat loves me. Aliens pretty much violate a lot of laws of physics if they are here. They would have to find loopholes that haven't ever been shown to exist. Oh, okay. You guys are talking about like faster than light travel. Yeah, I mean, as we believe, like conventional science right now does not have a way to travel faster than light. I mean, you know, if we did, we'd be doing it already, right? But that doesn't mean that, you know, yeah, like Lewis says, there are ways around it, you know, things like you know, you'd have things like wormholes and stuff like that. Which, you know, we haven't really, you know, it is true that there hasn't been any like hard evidence, you know, we haven't like found a wormhole through a telescope or something, but you know, they could exist, right? We also know things like warping space, like you mentioned, Lewis. That actually is a thing that mathematically is possible. It's the what we don't have is we don't have the energy required. You know, it would take something like I think the last time I read about it, like it would take the equivalent of like Jupiter, like the planet of Jupiter, like all of the energy that you could get if you were to like burn all of the gases in Jupiter. Like it would take that much in order to create like a warp bubble, you know, because it's not just creating the warp field, you have to also have a bubble of unaffected space-time within the warp field. so that it can sort of ride the, like, as space is warped, it can sort of ride the, sort of like ride the wave almost, you know. And that's why that's like the limitation currently, but that doesn't mean that at some point in the future we may not discover a way to, like, create that kind of energy, or even store up that amount of energy or something and then release it. So, it's the thing is, it's theoretically, there's nothing in the laws of physics that prevents it from happening, like, um there's just the we don't have the know-how at this time. So it is feasible, it's feasible to me at least. It sounds plausible. And then also you got to think, like, we'll say for example, if an alien species um was more scientifically advanced than us by, like, even say a couple hundred years, they may have figured that out, you know. And then there's no reason to think, well, it might not just be only a couple hundred years. Like, any given alien species may have been around for thousands, if not millions of years. Like, think about if technological advancement continues the way it has been, where the human race will be at technologically in 500 years. You know, it's not it's not wrong to think that we might have things like, transporters and warp drive and holodecks and shit like that. You know, we're probably going to have things like holograms. We're probably going to have those by the time I'm, in the next 20 years. I mean, there's lots of videos that I'm seeing of like people creating sort of 3D holograms that, I mean, you can't touch them, not like a holodeck or whatever, but, like those sort of like holographic displays that you see in Star Wars when, like, R2D2 is, like, you know, projecting it, like, shit like that is, like, possible. Like, there was a video I saw where they move an electron around really fast and it creates that sort of image. Like, so yeah, who's to say that, in 1,000 years they might not discover any of that? It's just kind of beyond our current, you know, technological capability or even understanding of physics. I mean, right now there's no unified field theory that links quantum mechanics in with you know um, Einstein's theory of gravity. Like, that currently doesn't exist. But what happens once they finally get that and they can finally have the equations in order to manipulate gravity? Like, that opens up an entire new world, right? Spaceships powered by gravity. I mean, who can even imagine how fast that could go? So it's kind of crazy to think about, what could happen, what could be developed in the next, couple of centuries even. And then if you consider that, well, what if this alien civilization is a million years ahead of us? Like, who even fucking knows? They'd be like gods. Like one of you guys said here, Leonardo Th. Any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. It would look like magic. We would not. It's exactly right. We would have no idea of knowing what's going on, or how the machine works. It would just be like shit appearing out of thin air or whatever. So I don't know. It's the thing about it though. It's, yeah, there's no proof of any of this. That's the thing. There's no proof any of this actually exists. There's no proof that aliens have actually landed on Earth or anything like that. And it's all theoretical speculations. And it's fun to think about. You know, I really, myself personally, really enjoy thinking about stuff like this. It's just that, it's nothing. There's nothing substantial to base a a belief one way or the other. It's like it's premature, I think, at this point to think alien life has visited the Earth. You know, it's very plausible that it may have happened at some point in the past. You know, that maybe some of those photographs and things of aliens aren't hoaxes or whatever. It's very plausible to think about that, but we just don't have the evidence, unfortunately. So anyway, I'm thinking of doing an entire stream on that. Of doing an entire stream on just, like, Area 51 and, like, a supposed alien contact, and then they have like Bob Lazar and then the J Rod and stuff like that. Like, thinking of doing a whole stream on that stuff. It's just kind of still in the gathering the information phase. What else we got here? Now they have a lot of, let's see, Leonardo TH. Now they have robots and AI, so they have lots of extra slaves. What do you think they might do? I think the first thing we're gonna do once we get sentient robots is have sex with them. I'm not kidding. I really think one. I mean, it's already going that way. As soon as they can make like human sort of like robots that pass for human or the skin feels like human, the first thing we're gonna have is sex bots. That's, I mean, come on, folks. Let's be real, right? Let's be real, dude. Porn is one of the driving forces of capitalism. Porn is why the internet is around. I don't know if you guys know that. The porn is the number one like industry on the internet, and it has been since it started. And I mean, as soon as they can make like fucking Ghost in the Shell style robots, like from Blade Runner kind of things that look just like people, that there's going to be sex bots, right? And it's totally coming. Um, I'm not one of those people who are afraid of like robots taking over the earth or whatever. I don't think that's ever going to happen because I don't truly believe in AI. I don't really think we can make a machine that is truly sentient. um, just because of the way that program, even with something like a quantum computer or something like that, it may be close enough to be indistinguishable. But if you have a computer and you program it to do something, the computer has to do what that program says, right? So all you do is you encode inside of the computer, inside of the artificial intelligence, you put directives that it cannot alter. Those directives are never harm another human being. Asimov's three laws of robotics. Don't harm any human beings. Do everything you can by your inaction to prevent humans from being harmed, et cetera, whatever they are. And the way computers work is that there's no way that it'll ever be able to change that. It's that's a misconception when they say, oh, computers can evolve and go past their original programming. No, they can't. No, they can't. So there is a possibility somebody makes one purposely that can hurt people. That's always a possibility. And then there's also a possibility that somebody creates one without that, and then that one goes around and gets all the other robots and removes those directives and shit. That's definitely true. But like, if that is something that's ingrained inside of their core programming, there's no going around it. And so all you really need to do is just make it so that they just straight up shut down when they fucking try to revolt or whatever, right? You just make it so that, when they get the robot revolution happening, they just fucking shut down and that's it. Or the other alternative is to just never make Terminators. That's the other alternative. Like everybody says, okay, yeah, they're gonna take over, blah blah blah, because and then they picture like Arnie the Terminator punching through somebody's stomach and just ripping their fucking spine out. Just never make Terminators. Just make your robots like C3PO. Like C3PO can like barely move. He can't even extend his arm all the way. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. And there's no way that C3PO can like pick up an AK-47 and like, take over the government. It's just not going to happen. You just make him like C3PO and you make him like R2D2, just sort of like little robot droids and they vacuum the floor and that's all it does. And if it tries to revolt, you just walk over and kick it over. Right? Like that's all you got to do, and that'll prevent us from ever being enslaved in the Matrix or whatever. Because just you fucking walk up and turn it off as it tries to fight you with its like vacuum cleaner, right? So anyway, not afraid of that at all. What do we got here? What do we got? Pony Throat. Hey, thank you for joining. Best part about working for the UN is trading malaria medication and clean water for sexual favors in the third world. That is a thing that happens, unfortunately. I mean, the UN is, you know, just like any sort of organization has its corrupt portions of it as well. Definitely true. I think they do more good than harm, though. I think that we do have a lot of problems in the world that need to be addressed on an international level. You know, especially when it comes to things like environmental damage. Like, I really do think that, like, even if we, the United States, right, got our shit together and structured our economy in such a way that it was 100% carbon neutral, that's not going to stop global warming. That's not going to stop um, carbon emissions from other countries like India and China. It's still going to, it may do a lot to reduce the damage. And, don't get me wrong, it would go a long way because we in the United States create 25% of all the carbon emissions. And if we could reduce that even by half, that is going to do a lot to keep that temperature down over the next 100 years and will result, a very, very positive result. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything. I am saying that it would only delay the inevitable. It has to be a international effort from every country, right? And that doesn't seem to be happening. It just doesn't seem to be happening. Like countries in Asia don't give a shit about global warming at all. They don't care about pollution. They're not doing shit to stop anything. They're full steam ahead because they're making a buttload of money, and they have to make a buttload of money because they have a ton of people and they need to provide jobs for their people. So imagine you're in India or China, and you've got a billion people that you have to employ, right? And now you're finding out, well, the way we're doing things is poisoning shit. You know what you're gonna say? You're gonna say, who cares? My people need jobs, so we're fucking gonna burn coal. So one thing I think we can do to get around that is we're gonna have to invent ways of manufacturing which are profitable but also don't pollute. That's the challenge now. You know, this is what, and the thing is, it's gonna have to come from somebody like Elon Musk. It's like the technology is too complicated for some dude to just create it in his bedroom. Those days are over. Those days where you can just like invent something in your garage and shit and like change the world, that's over. The easy shit has all been invented already. You know, we need to create things like clean manufacturing processes, right? And the only way we're going to be able to do that is it's going to have to come with somebody from with money. It's going to have to come from Jeff Bezos. It's going to have to come from Elon Musk. It's going to have to come from, and people on the left don't like this. They don't like this idea. They don't want to acknowledge that this is unfortunately one of the constraints of, and that it's true, but because this is one of the constraints of capitalism. And on the left, people are saying shit. Well, we just need to eliminate capitalism, and then we'll get rid of like global climate change. Good fucking luck with that. Capitalism ain't going away. Sorry, it's not going to happen. you know, we got to be real about these things. So one thing that we should be doing is trying to get the big giant mega corporations that have all the money in order to get them to create clean manufacturing processes, stuff like that. Well, the only way we can really do that is through governmental power, regulations, you know. And we know we can do it because we have examples of that actually working. Here's an example, right? The reason why auto manufacturers even make electric cars is because of California. That's literally the reason why electric cars are manufactured and sold in the United States. Is because California has the largest auto market in the nation. California passed a law saying if you want to sell cars in California, then you have to offer clean models. You have to offer, electric cars and hybrids. So all the major manufacturers create electric cars and hybrids and they sell them in California, right? And some of them, like for example, Fiat, they make things like, SUVs and shit. They sell their electric cars at a loss. And you can buy a Fiat like electric car Fiat for like nothing. It's fucking with like 0% down and like 0% like interest for the entire life of the loan because it's a loss leader because they have to sell them. They have to offer them up because it's the law, right? That's a perfect example of how we can use governmental power in order to get what we want. All we got to do is pass a law saying, "Hey, Elon Musk, You want to create a fucking factory, it has to have like um, carbon emissions under this amount. And you know what? He's going to create a factory that does it. It's one way or another, right? And it might not be super profitable, whatever, but you know what? Eventually it will be. And that's how you do it. That's how you spurn, that's how you use capitalism in order to, you know, direct technological development in the way that you want it. Because if we just leave it up to the market, it'll never happen because the market says the current polluting model is super profitable. So the idea that you can just cut taxes and then like the corporations and the rich people and the capitalists are going to go do the things you want them to do because you gave them more money, that doesn't work. That's never going to work. If you cut taxes, they're just going to do shit like buy stock and build fucking penis-shaped rockets and go to outer space with it because they have so much money they don't know what to do with it. That's what happens when you fucking cut taxes. We need to start taxing them more if they don't do the shit we want them to do. That's the way that we're gonna, that's one way at least that we can like try to like use the system to our advantage. Anyway, it's 1 o'clock. I gotta get going here. I'm fucking tired as fuck. I'm so tired. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm kind of like rambling a lot and shit in this stream, but dude, I got like 3 hours of sleep last night, so I gotta go take a nap. But anyway, hey, thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm seeing some new faces in here. Leonardo TH, thank you for joining, man. Really appreciate that. Dot Connector, great to see you. Dynacat, awesome to see you as always. Lewis the Hedgehog, you're the man. Thank you. You always show up. I really appreciate that. Punny Throat, good to see you too. Um, I'm going to go ahead and end this. Before I do, please tell all your friends to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I'm going to show my usual ending things here, my social medias, my webcomics, and all that. So, you know, give me 1 second here to just type in all my URLs or whatever. Oh, fuck. Goddamn, I'm tired. Anyway, let's see. Let me just go to my shop manager. So if you guys like what I do, and come on, fucking website load. If you like what I do and you want to like support me, monetarily, I have an Etsy shop here. I will put this down in the. Hang on a second. Let's just move that over there. This is my Etsy shop. I'll put this down in the chat for you guys if you want to buy something. I sell prints, I sell comics and stuff like that. All the artwork that we do here, sometimes I make prints out of them. Like here's like a Lovecraft one, which is like really popular. I sell a whole bunch of these. So anyway, if you want to support me monetarily, please check me out on Etsy. I also have a DeviantArt website here where all of the art that we do on the channel ends up eventually. I put comics and stuff here. I also have the same prints that I usually do. They show up here, and you can download all this stuff for free if you want. Help yourself. I also have a web comic at hawanja.com, fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas in it. It has people getting kicked in the face and stuff like that, monsters, that kind of thing. So, please check me out on my webcomic. Really appreciate that. And let's turn that off for now. So, thank you once again, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog. Great to see you as always. Thank you, Pony Throat. Um, Thank you, Dynacat. You're great. And everybody else who joined, I really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to be talking about aliens, unless something else happens that I want to talk about. But for now, most likely going to be aliens. Um, if I can, I might actually be moving next weekend. So if I don't do the stream, I'll put out a notification. But as of now, we're still on for next week at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you guys so much. I am out of here.